Welcome back to Global TV Talk Show. Our special guest today is in Eastern Saudi Arabia. Welcome back, Sandra Corona.
Hi, how are you, Ed? Thank you for inviting me.
So you're a long-time guest, many times on Global TV.
Yeah.
All of the programs that I've been fortunate to produce in the last 3 years are on our YouTube channel, and they're all publicly available 7/24. And that is youtube.com/@ Global TV Talk Show. And they're all there. So please subscribe. Speaking to you, audience. It doesn't cost anything. And welcome to the show. Sandra Corona and I have known each other now a couple of years. She happens to be a member also of Global Press Club, and we'll get into that another time. But it's a way to learn about media and learn strategy and tactics, and we offer training capability. In other words, you learn the skill by being a guest on radio, a guest on a one-on-one or in a panel situation, constantly meeting new people, learning new things. Oh, yeah. And so if a member of Global Press Club uses that to their advantage, they will learn a new skill, be less afraid or more tactical and more persuasive using Zoom or Teams or whatever to their advantage, to tell the story to customers, to our audience, and use our audience to build up your own new audience. And it's a win-win because we're producing good, valuable TV talk shows. Today's program is having to do, it's a psychological thing, isn't it?
It is. It's good that you mentioned that. So the title of today's show is Deceit. What really we're trying to say is lack of transparency or white lies. Okay?
And that is to hide something or to get something.
Exactly. Exactly.
Now, we are in the world of global mobility, which means interpersonal connections and amongst strangers, and under a forced situation. It sounds awful, but it's dealing with people who are in an authority role or a helpful role if they give you what you want or need. And so, and there's fear that comes into play of how you act or what you don't say or what you do, and you maybe come across, the B word comes to mind. But are you being honest with me? Are you being
yes?
What?
Yeah.
What? Why this? Why that? Okay. So tell us before we get into that, expatology. Am I saying that right?
Yes, you are. It's expatology. Yes. So expatology is the study of expatriation. Okay. And it talks about history. One of the things that people miss out in order for them to understand the location to where they're going to, respect the culture, respect the people, understand the customs, their values, their traditions, and so on, is that they don't look up the history. And when you don't look up the history, you find yourself asking questions that are sometimes a little bit offensive if you were to ask them to a local person of that country. Okay, so one of the questions would be is, for example, if I was to have a lack of understanding of the history of Saudi Arabia, and when I saw for the first time a redhead person, a ginger. Sorry, I hope that's not offensive. I've lost a lot of things. Okay, living in Saudi Arabia for almost 9 years, it's like I'm out of touch of a lot of things. So I apologize. And then you see a lot of white people, very white people, blondish, blue eyes, green eyes. You're like, how is this possible? And then when you read history, you understand, and you're like, oh, that's understandable. Why am I not giving you the information? Is because I hope that if this is something that attracts people, I have the opportunity to explain myself in the next episode. And so that's where you understand the history of the people in Saudi Arabia. And then another thing that I noticed was demographics. Demographics is, for example, I couldn't believe it myself, but I saw a Filipino Saudi, meaning that they were dressed completely toga and their veil, everything. It was like, what? And just so that you know, yes, you can dress like a Saudi, but for a Filipino to dress like a Saudi, it's highly questionable. However, the culture says it's okay because at some point they brought Filipinos to Saudi Arabia. And two, I think it was 1980, 1990, when Saudi Arabia opened their citizenship for the people that were giving to the country, right? That they were doing something for the country. And of course, a lot of them were Filipinos. So they gained the citizenship of being a Saudi. So, you see the importance of understanding history, demographics, right? And then you have cultural impact. Okay, how is this going to impact me? And when you talk about cultural impact, it also adds the other part of expatology, which is challenges. So if you're not prepared to understand Muslims, to understand what Sharia laws are and their Quran and what it means and what it's giving as a message, you're going to feel challenged because your morals, your values, and your beliefs are going to be questioned. You're going to question yourself, not the people. They're not going to question you. You are going to question yourself, and you're going to say, so do I have to give up my values and my beliefs in order to fit into the culture? That's what expatology does, okay?
I need to ask you a couple of questions.
Yeah.
I'm finding this fascinating, and I'm sure that most of our audience, maybe even 95% of the audience out there watching this, if not today, then in the weeks and months to come, because of the distribution patterns, they know nothing about the area, or they think of Lawrence of Arabia with all the sand and all these people who are either riding camels or riding in Jaguars because everyone's so rich here in Saudi Arabia. I think, maybe not, maybe, I don't know. But it's all these images, lack of information, of course, lack of education, lack of exposure, and geographically, and this is really interesting to me because I just learned about this from surfing the web to find out more about Saudi Arabia geographically, mountains, green areas, water, and there's a lot that you have learned by living there, even though in an enclosed compound with lots of privilege and security and comfort.
Yeah.
Everything's relative, but it's really a diverse country in terms of what it looks like, the rivers, the forests, the mountains, and of course, the sand dunes. So that is a mind blower. to people who have no education. Now, the idea about Sharia law, a lot of people in America, if not elsewhere, are scared to death of the threat, the perceived threat of what Sharia law is. And is it taking over? And do I have something to worry about? So when you, as an American, went on and as a on an expat assignment with your husband, what was your training before you got off the plane, before you even took off from Texas? So how did you get how did you acquire information that made you into the successful, more cultured, and highly educated person that you are now?
So I was a global mobility partner for one of the major chemical companies in Houston, Texas, well, in the US. And we were working on one of the biggest projects here in Saudi Arabia. That project is how I was introduced to the culture. Me training expats, because we give, the cultural shock, we give them some pre-departure advice, so on and so on. I was in knowledge of this information. But when it comes to the company that brought my husband to this assignment, had none. And I told my husband, don't worry about it. If you have any questions, ask me and I will tell you this. That's what I did with my husband. I gave my husband the pre-departure training that he never got. So, I'm not going to lie. We did have a pre-departure session of 1 or 2 hours. And to be honest, it was deceitful. Speaking of, because they didn't talk about the dark side or the Sharia law, if there was anything to be worried about. They didn't touch any of that. Everything was, oh, Saudi Arabia is wonderful. Saudi Arabia is growing. Saudi Arabia, this and that and that. It wasn't untrue. It was really true. However, what you really want to know is, what do I need to look for? What do I need to be cautious of? There was very little information. And that's why expatology exists, because it is your passport to success, right? To information.
So the study of the learning process. We're talking, I think, maybe too high level here. Let's bring it down
Okay.
and just say, why isn't the company, I'm just taking the stand here, why isn't the company more knowledgeable about the issues that we're having in our home? And it's caused by them sending me here, or me accepting that assignment without knowing the disruption and the issues that are going to develop in my life, not to mention the risk. I won't even get into the risk of being fired for not doing something properly because I don't have the training about certain things that is necessary because of the assignment. And then therefore, I want more money. I need to be better, be made whole mentally. And I've got a situation which is not business related, it's personal, but it's certainly impacting my performance and my mental well-being on this assignment. And the company owes me, quote unquote. And that attitude, if that is not covered up, I don't want to use the word deceit, but cover up In other words, not being open. Well, the company's not being open with me. Do they have a duty of care, a duty to care for me in my situation? You know, is this a two-way street? No, it's not. I'm getting a paycheck and they want service. Now I've got the family and the situation, not to mention the issues, lifestyle issues, cultural issues that the assignment shrouds me in, covers me. And what you're saying is, I mean, this is really a psychological battle, isn't it? Whereby the issue of deceit generates guilt, as you say, okay, but it also is a self-protection thing that I have to do. You know, I'm getting confused here because it's almost overwhelming to think about how you have survived all these years in your life successfully. And it's your assignment, your husband's assignment is coming to a close in the next foreseeable future. And you're going to have a rewiring of your brain to get you back to lifestyle in the US and what's next for you. And that's a big unknown. Okay, I'm talking too much. Tell us
That's
about
okay.
how you help people understand what they're going through and understand the language and the display of their actions, which could be viewed as not honest. And how, therefore, can I trust you?
Very, very good question. Everything that you said was important because you're giving a background of what we're talking about, right? So there is lack of transparency, like I said before, and then there white lies. Okay, so the lack of transparency is because a company, HR, and everyone in the C-suite don't.
I didn't hear you. I didn't hear
They
you.
don't. Oh, they don't want to be vulnerable.
Ah, okay.
Okay. Expat assignments is just a part of a company, right? However, everything that the company does is going to depend on a successful assignment, successful salaries, expat salary, you know, all the extras that come with an expat assignment. And so by not wanting to be vulnerable, meaning one of the biggest issues that companies have is housing. Okay. Everybody wants. Oh,
I didn't. Yeah, that will be better. Okay.
Probably. Okay.
Right
So
after you said housing, I didn't hear those words.
Okay, thank you. So rewind. And
that's funny.
Everyone wants to know where they're going to live because you said it yourself, and it's a thing in the expat world. Happy wife, happy life. Okay, but also if you have family, you want to make sure that your children are going to have the best education, meaning that you're wanting to know schooling, busing, education, what is close by for entertainment, all of those things you want to know, okay? But if housing is one of the biggest concerns, and this happens in not just VUCA countries like mine, it happens in many countries, the UK, Norway, Denmark, Luxembourg, you know, Germany, France, everywhere, okay? When you cannot provide information as to where the person is going to live in a VUCA location, which is usually a compound or a secure area, you're not going to say the truth. you are going to have a lack of transparency, because being vulnerable means I need to say the truth. Companies don't want to say that. They can't give themselves the luxury of losing expats. Now, in all fairness, these topics are talked about at least a year to a year and a half before the expatriation process happens. Okay? And so people, the same as you can investigate about history and demographics, you can investigate about housing and schooling by reaching out to people that are already on the expatriate assignment, right? So you are aware and you can ask the right questions that
Does
lead
the
you to a
company
successful assignment.
Help that happen, or is that done sub rosa through the networking?
So unfortunately, I did this, which is kind of contempt. Companies, it's a good company, they're going to tell you, okay? They're going to tell you they're working on housing, and they're going to do the impossible to find something that suits the expat community. Because there's another thing, certain nationalities want to be in certain locations, like closer to their nationality, right? So I know that in Houston, Texas, there was a tremendous need for the Indian community to be, the Norwegian expatriates to be in another location, Germany, all that kind of stuff. Here, since we know that there is no many options, what they are is compounds, we live near expats, period. We just live in an area that are close to expats. So unfortunately, back to your question, it depends on the company, on what they're willing to do for the expat, and if they want to retain their talent.
So when you worked for a relocation services provider in the role of counselor, explainer, I guess, that's really a difficult job, and being a relocation counselor, and people don't realize that. And oftentimes the corporate chain of command has no idea of the work that goes into it, and the risk, and how much effort and energy and time. And yet the corporate structure inevitably is going to say, the CFO won't let me spend what you need. So now what?
Don't have trust. That's what happens. Being a global mobility partner, not being able to see a person in Zoom, because back when I was an expat, a global mobility partner, there was no Zoom. All we relied was phone. So if I was to tell a person, they would ask me about housing, and the company would tell me, hey, you need to tell expats that we're working on the housing. In reality, we don't have anything for them yet. How could I be transparent, and how could I sound honest and then still gain their trust if I myself have an issue with my values as a global mobility partner to not lie? Like, you can tell when I'm lying. You can tell when a person is not saying the truth. Lying sounds a little bit big. When a person is not being transparent, right? You hear it in their voice. You hear it in the way that they talk, the language that they use. So for me, it was extremely difficult. And I found myself hearing people saying, how can I trust if every time I call, I always get the same answer? please hold on, or we're working on it. That's not an answer. I think people prefer the truth, right, than a white lie.
That's difficult. So life goes on. So the issues that develop between the expat, I'll just say the expat and means the family, okay, versus the company. It's not a together thing. It's not a, it's a tenuous relationship. It's not happy times. And it's constant tension, right? There's always something lurking rather than here's the benefit package and there won't be any exceptions. Just tell it like it is rather than be misleading or deceitful.
Sounds great. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So this, what you're saying, when you're involving the family, when it's a family accompanied assignment, there's quite a lot of things that you have to keep in mind as a global mobility partner. And again, it's schooling, paperwork that is required for the child to be accepted depending on the kind of schooling that they have. If they have public schooling, is not so hard, but here in Saudi Arabia, we have public schools only for expats. Expats cannot sign up their children to public schools. And there is the British school district, there is the American school district, there's the French school district, and then there is another one that I forget, so apologies for that. And has their own expectations of how the child needs to perform. And so imagine when a parent finds out, oh, my child is finally being responsible for their grades. Now it's time for you to show me that those A's or A pluses are worth it, right? And so I can tell you that a lot of people feel extremely frustrated because regardless of the child's background in education and capabilities, they're rejected, and that brings shame. Okay, so usually what we do, if you know that this is required, if you know that the country is quite demanding and the school districts are very demanding depending on where you want to sign up your child, you give them a package that offers education for the child, such as language, because you also have to have the basic language. So imagine when you have a family like that, what you're bringing is guilt, shame, expectations, false expectations, hope, right? And all of the first two, shame and guilt, is because the parent is wondering now, oops, am I making the right decision for my child? Well, if my child is not accepted, oops, my wife is now going to have to probably do homeschooling because my child didn't meet the expectations. So as you can see, it's not the seat in this case what you're managing, but it's the shame and the emotions that come with you first telling your children, oh, you're going to have an amazing time. You know, the country is fantastic. They're going to offer you so much, and there's going to be so many cultures that you're going to learn from, to then realizing my child is probably not going to be able to go on assignment with me. See that? And so, you know, that is a big responsibility from the side of the expat to bring their family, and for the company to provide support for the entire family, which companies don't do. Back in my days, I would include the wife. I didn't care what the company would say. I would ask the wife and the expat, I would say, when do you want to meet? Oh, X day. Is your wife available that day or your husband available that day? Oh, no. Okay, please find a date when your spouse is available because we have to talk a lot. And usually the spouse or the trailing spouse is the one that is in charge of all the logistics,
Yeah.
right?
Okay. Now let me ask you a question about the money. It comes down to the company paying for the education, right?
Yeah. Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
You
So
cannot
do,
not
do,
pay if the country's demanding private schooling.
so that inevitably comes down to the interpersonal relationship between um, the parents
Yeah.
uh, and guilt for 10 years ago not paying more attention to Johnny or Susie's prep
Family.
for schooling. You know, oh, you never did this for Johnny or Susie. Okay, you did a finger pointing, and and that's enough to ratchet up not only deceit but guilt, anger, and it's actually an becomes an explosive situation.
Oh, yeah. Mhm.
And
Correct.
that could lead to assignment failure, certainly disruption, and that'll cost the company tons of money and may get that employee fired. They'll make up a reason just to get rid of the problem.
Correct. Correct. So one of the problems also besides, well, I would call it more the dark side of low mobility is what you're saying. Negotiation. Talk with the low mobility business partner, because this is different. This is not the global mobility partner or the global mobility specialist. There is business partner, right? And there is the person with whom you're going to talk about a signing bonus, what you can get for your child, because, well, expats have special needs children too, what you can provide for your wife. Again, I think what I want to emphasize is that you have the good companies that are going to say, tell me what you need. We have calculated that into the project. So tell me what you need. And then there's a company that says, oh, it's not part of the package. And you won't move them from that type of language. It is not part of the package. They won't seek for the exception. They won't find options to help you. It will just be a plain no, disguised as it's not part of the project. Now, what I like about certain companies is that, again, like I mentioned before, companies know 5 years in advance that a project is coming. Okay, because they have to look into their financials, they have to look into the laws, policies, writing their policies, their human resources, gathering the talent, right, that is going to manage the process. And then 1 year, right, into getting people and accepting and all this kind of stuff. However, people find out that there's a project coming from the moment it starts. Okay, so being unaware is probably the expat's responsibility. And if you're part of that company already and you don't do your homework, yeah, absolutely, you're going to be upset because nobody told you. But then again, whose responsibility is it? Is it you that wants to go to the assignment, or is it the company's responsibility? At the beginning, it's yours because you're like, I want to be part of that project. You know, it sounds amazing. And then the other part is, do I want to be a part of that project because I don't have the information, well, I'm going to wait until they tell me, or if they ask me, I'm going to sign up and I'm going to see if they accept me. That's a different kind of behavior. So your attitude, the way that you manage your response to certain interactions and information is really your responsibility, not the company's.
So now I want to ask you a couple of questions about training people like you. You didn't fall off a tree. You had some psychological interest um, in the psychology of interpersonal relations, and you had the specific knowledge about from business training and business activity back in Houston a long time ago now, but you had some basic training in skills, interpersonal skills, and getting things accomplished as a mobility partner, a business partner. I had an interview with a guy the other day, Dale Collins, I don't know whether you know him, relocation company executive for many years. He is now embarking on getting a PhD with a focus on multinational corporations using mobility for not only talent development, but to achieve results and the study of it. I don't know of anybody in the world who has a PhD in mobility, but this guy is going to achieve that. He's determined to make it work. And you are talking about a very, very important thing, the psychological well-being of employee and family as a result of an assignment, and all the things that go on or not go on that should, and then all of the costs involved. And how does a company recognize a value? What's the value of sending me on an assignment that's going to be all these problems? What a mess.
So I think I cannot say what a PhD looks like in global mobility because, like you said, this is new to me. Actually, for me, it's new, and it was new, and it's still gain a certificate in global mobility services. Okay, I am extremely surprised of how global mobility has given that boom, but the reason why there is people going into that area is because everybody wants to measure everything, right? And they wanted to see it projected into KPIs. Why? Again, because leaders, because the C-suite people only see numbers. They don't want to know about Susan or Toby or Donna or Diana. They don't want to know about their personal lives as to why they didn't perform this day, right? They want to see numbers. And so in order for people, because there's now a possibility to measure, beliefs, values, there's now a way, but is it effective? And I'm guessing this is the part of the PhD. If it's true that now they're wanting to measure values, beliefs, what's the word I'm trying to remember? Ethics. It's fantastic, because then not only are they going to measure you based on performance, but based on all of these important emotions or reactions or feelings, whatever you want to call them. I think there would be reactions because there's now a responsibility on how you treat people. There's now a responsibility of transparency and about being honest and about talking with truth. One of the truth is, for example, is how well you communicate with your employees. If they could add into psychological safety, that would be amazing, into their performance review. Because if you add those things up, you would get the results you want nowadays, where, you know, people, like you were saying, we were talking before, people that have neurodiverse people, borderline, what's it called? Autism, people that have autism, people that are shy. I can't remember the word, but that's the best word I can use. Well, to not only produce, but to succeed, right? So if we talk about those kind of things, about measuring, that would be fantastic. That's why I assume your friend is going into that, because there has to be a clear understanding as to how to improve performance, right? That's what I think.
So in the survey that I'm running, that I started yesterday afternoon here in California on LinkedIn about should expats be paid on performing well on assignment? Should there be a bonus? And you know, how, and then it goes to who's going to measure it? How's it going to get measured? And at what point is there a bonus reason? You know, why should me as an expat get a bonus? I'm already getting a six-figure thing in benefits, but why should I be paid $25,000, let's say, because I did really well? I solved a problem for the company. I opened a new business line, or I did something that the company's going to benefit. And so am I going to gain from that other than pats on the back and some kind of certificate showing that I completed an assignment with honor or whatever? On the other hand, can a destination services provider, a counselor in mobility, should they get paid a bonus for above and beyond the call of duty for
Oh, no
services?
question about it.
Okay, so let's turn, as we come to a close here on this really interesting, never-ending discussion. I'm talking too much. I should let you talk more, but
no, I know where you're going. Yeah, no.
So this is your business. It's the study of being an expat and all the things that go into it. I hope you write everything down, because this could be your pathway to a PhD.
Oh, that would be fantastic. Actually, yes, I write a lot of things, and there's things that, you know, in the past I didn't realize. Let me tell you that. Let's start with the first thing. You asked me and you put it out there, you know, should expats be receiving some kind of bonus because they did an excellent job? Well, let's be honest. People already receive bonuses for that, right? That's why it's called salary increase. And then there's
Oh, you're breaking up. I didn't
Oh.
quite hear everything.
Oh gosh, sorry. So people are already getting paid the mid of the year bonus, end of the year bonus, and then you get your salary increase for performing well. I am not sure if what they're looking for is if the company has increased their wins. Should I see that? Well, a good company, again, I always say a good company is going to give you stocks. Okay, that is you receiving the benefit of what the company receives every year. If it goes up, your bonus goes up when in your stocks. If it goes down, it stays neutral, because also companies protect their employees. Again, we're talking about good companies.
Yeah.
In the last company that I was, they did that and it was fantastic. Okay. About just getting a bonus for performing, there's a couple of countries that I could mention, based on what I remember, is that you had some countries in Africa, some countries, you had Brazil, and I can't remember another country at this moment that had a limit as to how much a person could earn per year. Let's say a rich salary that they could earn. If they go past that, then that money goes to the country, to the government. Imagine that. So the company has to be very creative to give bonuses for the people to not lose their money from certain countries. Okay, I hope that answers your first question.
I never even heard of that before. So thank you very
It does
much.
exist, yes.
We're breaking news on Global TV.
Yes. And then, I'm sorry, you had another question.
Yeah, about pay, the counselor, the destination services provider,
Yeah.
counselors, they work long hours. They have to deal with people who are stressed out and dealing with a company that maybe doesn't want to hear about it all. But should they get paid for putting up with all this, above and beyond what they already get?
And the company does what they have to do in order for us to receive the bonuses that we are eligible for, not entitled, eligible for, right? And the way that I see it is that if a company trains their best talent, right? Because if you are performing, if you're a high achiever, if you're an overperformer, then you would have a special place in the company. Therefore, training, I see it highly more valuable because that's going to increase my salary next year. That's how I see it. Not every company trains their people. They don't even train their contractors. If every company would put money into their employees from the moment that they come on board to the company, and including contractors and part-time employees, every company would have a pool of VIP employees that they can send overseas constantly. They won't even have to be looking outside the company. That's my personal opinion.
It sounds like somebody wants you there.
I did that, but oh well, those are my babies.
Thank you for being on Global TV and sharing the realities. We talked about guilt, we talked about deception, we talked about disappointment, we talked about anger, we talked about risk. There's a lot that we talked about, and I thank you for being so open with me and the audience and letting me bounce silly questions off you.
Oh no, thank you. There's no silly questions in global mobility. I wish that more people would ask the questions, regardless of how silly they may sound, because there's usually a reason behind it, which is personal, which is kind of confirming something that they probably heard from a friend of a friend of a friend, right? And so not all companies, again, I think it's important to emphasize that not all companies offer the same benefits, right? So maybe the company that is reflected with a C thing, okay, that is like a snail, okay, that company gives different benefits than the company that is familiar with the dinosaur, right? Or what starts with an M. So that is one of the best things that you can do. Leave all the shame, leave the, oh, I'm sorry if I'm bothering you. No, those questions need to be asked. So thank you, and I appreciate the invite.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too, Ed. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Bye-bye.
Thank you. This is Ed signing off in San Diego. And thank you, Sandra Corona, for allowing me into your evening. Thank you. Bye.